Hey, Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in this video I want to talk about improvising in the Lydian mode. So the main thing I want you to take from this video and the main point of all this is that modes are sounds. So if you can recognize the difference between major keys and minor keys, then you already understand modes. That's all it is. Modes are sounds. So you can write a piece of music in a major key and everything's going to sound happy, cheery, bright, whatever. However you want to label that sound, that is the major key sound. So another name for a major key is the Ionian mode. So you can also write music in minor keys and everything's going to sound sad, dark, whatever. However you want to label that sound, that's the minor key sound. So another name for a minor key is the Aeolian mode. So you have your Aeolian mode sound, you have your Ionian mode sound. They sound completely different from one another. Well, you also have these other sounds. You have Lydian, Dorian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, Locrian. So each mode has its own very, very specific sound. So in this lesson, we are going to look at the sound of the Lydian mode. So let's get started. All right, so this whole lesson is going to be about the A Lydian mode. So that means our tonal center is going to be the note A the entire time. So let's start off by comparing the A major scale to the A Lydian scale. So let's play the A major scale right here, starting on the 5th fret of the low E string. So using this pattern and playing in just one octave, you have this. So that is your A major scale. So the A Lydian scale simply has a sharp 4 in relation to that. So you count up 4 notes. There's your 4th note. Make that sharp. Now you have your A Lydian scale. So that's the only difference. One single note difference from the major scale. So you can see that that one note really makes a significant difference. So one example that people always like to use when talking about the Lydian scale is the Simpsons theme song. So you can play that all right here using just this little pattern right here. All right, so that's your Simpsons theme song. That takes advantage of that sharp 4 note right there. So all that is Lydian. So you can take this same pattern and you can span this across 6 strings if you want, and that's going to look and sound like this. All right, so it's got a pretty exotic sound. So keeping in mind that your root note is A, you can also see that an A major chord can be found right in this. So if you take the 1st, 3rd, and 5th note, that's how you find your first chord for any scale. So here's the 1st note. Here's your 3rd note. There's your 5th note. So your 1st note, your 3rd note, and your 5th note are A, C sharp, and E. So that's an A major chord. So an A major chord is your 1 chord within the Lydian mode. All right, so the thing to understand about modes is that they all share the same patterns as one another. So all 7 modes, they all have the same patterns. And those patterns, they span the entire neck of the guitar. All these patterns, they go together, kind of like a puzzle, and it's called the diatonic scale. What differentiates one mode from another mode is which note within those patterns you are choosing to be the tonal center. So for this lesson, we're looking at the A Lydian mode. Therefore, within these patterns, the note A is always going to be the tonal center. So A is always going to be the scale root, whether you're playing here, 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 here. It doesn't make a difference. So what patterns does the A Lydian mode share? So you have to determine what is known as the parent major scale. So all modes are derived from a parent major scale. So the A Lydian mode is derived from what major scale? So if you can answer that question, then you can then use those major scale patterns to help you improvise, keeping in mind that your note A is always going to be the focus within those patterns. So to find the parent major scale, it's a two-step process. Number one, you have to assign a number 1 through 7 to each of the modes. So Ionian is 1, Dorian is 2, Phrygian is 3, Lydian 4, Mixolydian 5, Aeolian 6, and Locrian 7. So memorize each of those 7 numbers or write them down or whatever. It's always going to be that. The next thing is you're going to take the major scale pattern that we already looked at, assign a number to each one of the notes of the major scale, and then move that major scale pattern around until we line it up and then find our 1. So this is a lot easier to just show you on the fretboard than to try and explain it. So let's look at this major scale pattern that we already looked at before. We looked at this on the 5th fret, but this major scale pattern can be played anywhere. All right. So keeping in mind that the note A is our tonal center, and keeping in mind that A needs to be 4, you have to line this scale pattern up such that 4 lands on A, because A is the Lydian mode, and we're trying to work our way back to 1. So if 4 is A, take this scale pattern, move it up to here. So now 4 is landing on the 12th fret of the A string. So A is right there, so that means that we can work our way back, and 1 is right here. So 4 lands on A right here, 1 is here. So that is the note E. So that tells us that E is the parent major scale of the A Lydian mode. So what does that mean? That simply just means that the E major scale and the A Lydian scale share the exact same notes. So let's look at that. So what are the notes of the A Lydian scale? So let's start here. So A Lydian scale is A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So those are the notes. So those same notes can be found up here using this pattern too. All right, so you have E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, and then D sharp, and then E. So you can use this pattern. It's the same exact 7 notes, but you just want to make sure that you focus on the note A because that's your tonal center. So right there, using the E major scale pattern, you can still use that just as long as you focus on the note A. It's the A Lydian mode. So that's confusing to a lot of people. A lot of people get confused about that. They say, well, what's up with that? How am I going to make A the tonal center? It's the E major scale. This becomes apparent once you play this over a backing track. So you have to take this scale pattern here, and instead of playing it over some sort of an E major backing track, you need to play it over something that is A. So you can either play it over just an A note that's ringing out the entire time, otherwise known as a drone note. So you can just play this over an A drone note, or you can play it over an A major chord, because as we already looked at, the A major chord is the first chord of the A Lydian mode. So I'm just going to take a rhythm section, and it's just going to have an A major chord playing, and then I'm going to play this E major scale pattern over top of it, emphasizing on the note A, of course, because A is the tonal center within the scale pattern, and you're going to see that how this all comes together. It produces this A type of sound. So you can see that when you're playing this scale pattern, even though this is the E major scale pattern, you can see that when you play it over an A type of chord, that's really what solidifies the sound. So you can play this scale pattern in any order you want, but it's no longer E major, it is now A Lydian because the chord progression was dictating that. So you can also take the same scale pattern and you can play it in a few other ways. So I like to play the E major scale, or any major scale for that matter, like this. I like to start with my pinky right here, and I like to play this scale pattern. But again, our tonal center is not going to be the note E. Our tonal center is going to be the note A. So I still like this pattern. I'm just going to make sure I emphasize the note A. So again, I'm using this scale pattern. I may be familiar with my E major scale pattern here, but I just have to focus on the note A. So spanning this across all 6 strings, your pattern is going to be like this. So you may be more familiar with playing that pattern. So if you want to use that pattern, that is fine. You also may be familiar in thinking in terms of minors. So instead of thinking of E major pattern, with the emphasis on the note A, of course, you may also like to think in terms of minor. So you may like to think in terms of, okay, this is my C sharp minor scale pattern. So E major and C sharp minor are a relative major minor pair. Just like E major and A Lydian are also a relative pair. They all share the same notes, they share the same patterns. But if I prefer to think about this as my C sharp minor scale pattern, I can think about it in that pattern too. Of course, I have to make sure to focus on the note A. So if I want to think about this as the E major scale pattern with the emphasis on the note A, that's fine. If I want to think about this as the C sharp minor scale pattern with emphasis on the note A, that's fine too. I can use this pattern. So as I'm improvising, I can use this first pattern that we started out for our A Lydian mode. I can use this pattern here. Just focus on the note A. I can use this pattern here. Just focusing on the note A. I can use any pattern that I want. It's just the same 7 notes. So hopefully that demo made some things clear. Hopefully that pointed out that the scale patterns were the same. So the E major scale patterns and the C sharp minor scale patterns and the A Lydian scale patterns, they're all exactly the same thing. The same is true for all of the other modes. But this isn't E major, this isn't C sharp minor. The chord progression, the fact that it was an A chord that we were playing all this stuff over, that dictated, okay, this is A Lydian. So the last thing I want to talk about here is Lydian chord progressions. So if you have a major chord followed by another major chord that is 1 whole step higher, that is a strong indication that is a Lydian chord progression. So if A major is our 1 chord, the next major chord that would be 1 whole step higher would be a B major chord. So if you have a chord progression that goes so 2 major chords back to back with your first, the lower of the 2 being your tonal center, that is a Lydian chord progression. So why is that Lydian? Well, if it was just A major or A Ionian, your 1 chord would still be an A major chord, but your 2 chord, your second chord within a major scale, is always going to be a minor chord. But in this case, it's a major chord. So what's the difference between a minor chord and a major chord? Here's minor, here's major. The difference is this note right here. That note is the same as this note. And what is that note right there? That's that Lydian note. So that one note that makes the B major chord a major chord instead of a minor chord, that is the Lydian note. So that's why when you have a major 1 chord followed by a major 2 chord, that is a Lydian chord progression. So you could also use your circle of fifths to kind of help you out with all this stuff. So we know that E major is our parent major scale. So that means that all of the stuff is coming from E major. So even though we're in A Lydian, A is our tonal center, the A major chord is our home chord or our 1 chord, we're still using all the same patterns. We're still using all the same notes. Everything from E major is being used in this lesson. You can also use the same chords. So if you know what your chords are for the key signature of E major, then you can also use all that same stuff for A Lydian. Because it's a relative mode, it comes from E major. The thing about modes and the thing about modal chord progressions is that the more chords that you use, the less likely it is to actually be modal. And when I say modal, I'm talking about modes other than Ionian or Aeolian. So Ionian and Aeolian, they have the most stable sounds. So you can use a bunch of chords. You can have 5 chords in the chord progression, and it's going to be very easy to dictate the the E major to be your tonal center or the C sharp minor to be your tonal center within this grouping of 6, because Aeolian and Ionian are stable modes. These other modes aren't quite as stable. So if you start using 3 chords, 4 chords, 5 chords, I'm not saying it's impossible to make A to remain your tonal center, but it's more difficult because the more chords that you start to play, the more of a pull it's going to have back towards E or back towards C sharp minor, simply because those are just more stable modes. So that's why I kind of just limit it to 2 chords. So limiting it to the A major chord and the B major chord, which has that Lydian note in there, limiting to just those 2 things and jumping back and forth, that is a pretty stable sound for the Lydian sound. And if you think about it, those 2 chords, when played together back to back, they sound like something's building and building and building and building and building, but it's never actually resolving. It's never actually finishing. It's building up to something that it's never actually getting to. So the thing that it's trying to get to is the E major chord, because that's going to be your most stable chord within this key signature. So hear how nice that sounds. Once you finally hit that E major chord, it's like, okay, we're there. We finally got there. So that's how these modes work. So if I'm just jumping back and forth between A major and B major, you're constantly trying to get somewhere. You're getting, but you're never getting there. Once you hit that E major chord, you've got there. So that's why the more chords that you use in a chord progression, the less likely it is to be modal, because they want to get there. They want to get to that point of resolution. And the more chords that you use, the stronger that pull towards resolution is going to be, and the harder it's going to be to maintain that still trying to get there sound, if that makes any sense. So hopefully I'm making sense here. So limit the amount of chords that you use within a key signature if you're trying to make a modal sound. All right, so I hope you guys like this one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.